Hey, and welcome to another cast. This is Telray. I'm casting another Dawn of War 2 Retribution game. We see this is on Greentooth Gorge, which is a pretty commonly played 1 vs 1 map. This is going to be, again, between Vindicare and Texanius. A little bit guessing on these names. Both of them have over 100 games solo played, and with Retribution being a newer game, that's a respectable amount of games played. Definitely be interesting to see how this game goes. We have Force Commander versus the War Boss, and in that matchup you're definitely talking about the two power heroes of their races. They're both definitely the heroes who try to run in, do a lot of the combat and killing themselves, and be supported by their troops. And we see that our Orc player with his War Boss is starting off with a pretty standard 2 Shooter Boys. That's a very common build. You see it being used against pretty much every race. The idea there is the War Boss can be used for a lot of the tanking, and those Shooter Boys, especially once upgraded, can just dish out so much DPS that they really can be an effective presence in that early game. See, he's sending one of his Shooter Boys to support the War Boss, and that's definitely going to be something that the Force Commander is going to need to be aware of. Certainly I'd be recommending running for those Shooter Boys if he's going to engage this group, and we're about to see what's going to happen. Yep, so we have engagement. About the only thing I would argue with right now is, I definitely still think that the Force Commander should be tying up those Shooter Boys. There we go. That way, help prevent some of that DPS from being unleashed on his own troops. And you see, if the War Boss chooses not to deal with these TAC Marines, they'll actually deal a lot of damage at range themselves. And unfortunately for our Space Marine player, these shooter squads will win. Even out exposed, they will eventually win against these scouts, just because there's so many more unit models in their groups, and they are a little bit better defensively. We see though that the Force Commander was quick to run over, help support his troops, and keep everyone happy and alive. So I did a little bit of research before I started this game. It looked like Vindicare had about 100 games played with about 70 wins. It put him about 70% win ratio, which is definitely respectable. And at that many games played, you figure he's probably played a few good guys. And then Tex was, looks like we lost the unit model on the scout squad, retreating, but he did decap that point. That's definitely gonna lower the requisition gain of our Orc player. It's certainly something to watch out for as the game goes on, because anytime you decap those points, they go from being 30 to they will slowly gain points, starting at about 5 and working their way back up. I could be mistaken. In Retribution it may be a little bit higher. Starts at 10, goes to 20, then 30 finally. You see that the Orc player is trying to capture the midpoint again, and it looks like the Slugger Boys have been pushed off by the TAC Marines. I'm guessing Chompy Bits, Angry Bits rather. Angry Bits has been used on the War Boss. That's going to cost a little bit of energy and requisition, but he's going to make him that much more powerful. We see that the Scout Squad has gone with that Sniper Rifle. Something that I certainly debate. Sniper Rifle, very powerful weapon, but also fairly expensive, and has some disadvantages. It does have a setup time before the squad can actually fire it. It does do that high single target DPS, but later in the game, and also versus an Orc player where they have these troops that have 5-6 members, losing a member is certainly a hit to your economy, but not as much as with Space Marines when they only have 3, sometimes 4 units. So we see that the Scout Squad's setting up, shooting off. Yeah, he has to get running. So we see pushing off the War Boss. The Force Commander definitely able to keep fighting even against these buff Slugger Squads. That's kind of the name of the game when you are the Force Commander. You try to stay in there. Using that Armor of Valkrasity gives them that extra speed, allowing them to run away. Jumping into the building, because as of right now, those Slugger Squads really don't have a way to effectively fight against that. You see that the attack marines are being attacked by these shooter boys. That's definitely a matchup we'd be expecting the Space Marine player to win, and it certainly does. If we head back over to the right side of the map, this is about to get a little bit interesting. We have a set up Devastator Marine squad, but Storm Boys have jumped in. Those are the jump pack squads of the Orc player. They can, kind of like the Soul Marines, jump right in, disrupt any setup squads, get into melee real quick, and do a heck of a lot of damage. See the Force Commanders just whacking away on this building, although probably not going to take it down anytime too soon. One of the other advantages of this armor, it does give a slight increase to the health of the Force Commander, allowing him to stay in the battle a little bit longer. See that the Scout Squads are setting back up, taking down that last unit in that squad. Definitely a gain for the Space Marine player, because as Space Marines you're oftentimes being considered outspawned or outspammed, just meaning that there's more enemy units on the field or enemy squads on the field than you can. See, that's not the case right now. The Orc player is definitely saving up a heck of a lot of requisition. 600 requisition, really makes you feel like you should have been throwing down a second gen farm earlier, or doing something. You really, not those resources don't help you just sitting in your bay. And we see that the Orc is continuing to be able to maintain map control, even while having not as many squads as his opponent. Definitely an impressive thing to do. It shows that he is playing well, using his abilities and units very, very effectively. Probably one of the biggest mistakes, if there was one. Personal preference, but right now still don't always agree with the choice to use those sniper rifles. Mistake there on the War Boss's part, ran directly into the line of that Devastator Marine squad. Gonna push them back at very low health, and they're gonna allow the Force Commander and the Space Marine units to start taking control back of the map. At this point, you see timing is very, very similar on their Tier 2 upgrade. So even with more units, the Space Marine player has been able to get to that Tier 2 at the same time. He's going to have a little bit less power and requisition once he gets there, but he won't be so far behind that if the Orc player gets out of vehicle, he would be unable to counter it. And you see that the Storm Boys are running in, trying to do some damage. This is one of those times, a little bit of micro, splitting your squads off into a couple directions can definitely be a good idea. Go back over here and we see that the Shooter Boys are recapping this point, or decapping, and then we'll start recapping. They choose to run away because they do see that the Scout Squad's head moved over.
The Codex Astartes guides us to victory.
Tex is making a little bit of a joke about how this isn't necessarily standard Space Marine play, but obviously it is being effective. Very often you see Eldar players getting lots of range units and what would be considered a setup squad, like the Devastator Marine. The big difference is instead of a Devastator Marine squad, they would have their Shuriken Cannon squad. Very, very similar how it actually plays though. See that the War Boss is continuing to just run right after these scouts. Very easy for him to take down models from that squad. A little bit of micro though is just allowing the Space Marine player, Vin, to just throw those units right up inside and not worry about losing anymore. If we keep following, we see that the Librarian has just spawned and pushed the War Boss back. The Space Marine players continue to use the sniper rifles fairly effectively. He's harassing any units that choose to cap points because they are somewhat defenseless when capping points. So we'll continue to see how this goes. We have the Force Commander capping this point up top. He's about to be engaged by these Storm Boys. But once again, the Force Commander is a powerful melee hero. And he is being supported by... Sounds like we had a little bit of action going on over here.
The enemy has 200
and
points
stick
remaining.
bombers have been built, and a war truck. So this is one that's going to get a little bit trickier for the Space Marine player. This war truck's going to allow the Orc to continue reinforcing right in the field, stay with high numbers, kind of ball up and just really push anywhere he wants on the map.
The enemy is capturing one of our victory points.
You see that the war truck has begun shooting the power node, but personally I would continue on and try to harass down any scouts I could find. And you see that suppression has been used, and it's an activated ability by the big shooter. That's going to allow them to slow down those Space Marines, also make them less effective in combat. See, we do have a Razorback coming out, and it does appear, sorry guys, looks like I missed it, but a Scout Squad did completely go down for our Tech Marine, or rather our Space Marine player. You know, that's definitely a big blow because he did use those sniper rifles, and I believe they do cost 150 requisition, plus somewhere in the range of 30-35 energy. It's definitely a hit to lose that, on top of just the hit of losing an entire squad at any time. The Force Commander has gone with the Thunderhammer, which is definitely going to make him effective against those groups of infantry. He's going to have the ability to knock back enemy units and really just disrupt any attempts of that infantry of setting up and just laying down fire. And we see the Librarian has gone with the Tome of Time. That's going to give another speed buff, which is just going to make this Force Commander pretty much as fast as you can make a unit run in the game. Here the Scouts and the Space Marine, Tactical Marines are getting pushed back. The Razorback, though, is pretty well uncontested in some of the same way that War Truck is. Although the big difference, the Razorback, especially now that he's got reinforced plating, he's got a significant amount more life than the War Truck, and it's gonna allow him to really go toe to toe with the War Truck and push him out. Luckily for the War Truck, it wasn't intercepted by those TAC Marines because that missile launcher does do an exceptional amount of damage. And we see the Tome of Time being used on the Librarian himself just to back him out. Ooh, and it's only 21 health. This is so close. Oh, but unfortunately a misclick. If he had continued to chase with that Razorback, he may have had it. See Scout Marines continuing to cap. War Boss is just doing his thing, running in, trying to disrupt the enemy troops, which at this point is those TAC Marines, and he's definitely effective at it. See, the Librarian is going to get focused down. It does force all of the enemy units to retreat, once again regaining map control for the Space Marine player, and it's not looking good for our Warg player right now. Ooh, that was a good jump, jumping in, forcing the squads to load up inside that Razorback, but unfortunately those Storm Boys just don't have quite enough damage against the vehicle type to really affect that Razorback. It's allowing it to just kind of stay in the fight and keep harassing him down.